Your Honours, we understand the trial chamber's desire to make sure that those responsible for the appalling events at the Heliodrome and other detention facilities should be prosecuted and punished. We understand their revulsion when confronted with the evidence of the terrible things that happened at those centres. We saw some of that evidence on Friday. We may see more of that evidence later today. But we say, even if that evidence shows that Mr. Puzic may have been informed of what was happening on the ground in those centres, when it is viewed clinically and dispassionately, as it must be in any court of law, it does not prove to the criminal standard that he could have remedied those problems. And it follows from that, we say, that Mr. Puzic could not and did not make a substantial contribution to the JCE. Your Honours, I don't need to remind you that it's not for the defence to prove anything in this case. We didn't put on a positive case at trial. That's because we took the view, and we stick to this view, the prosecution evidence adduced did not come close to establishing Mr. Puzic's guilt beyond reasonable doubt. Your Honours, I will end here with a quote from an author, Robert Caro. This quote came to mind because I've just finished his third 1,000-page volume, a monumental biography of Lyndon Johnson, which is now what I consider to be light reading, having practiced here for 10 years. But, Your Honour, Mr. Caro is a useful officer, I would suggest, to refer to whenever one is called to examine the extent and ways in which political power can be wielded. There are two famous quotes attributed to Mr. Caro. First, he said, "What I believe is always true about power is that power reveals." Second, he said, "You can use a biography to examine political power, but only if you pick the right guy." Your Honour, as we say, the prosecution and the trial chamber, who relied on the evidence adduced at trial, did not pick the right guy in this case. They picked a guy who, when Slobodan Praljak was told of his name as one of the accused, he said he had to ask his secretary who he was. Who is Mr. Puzic? And, Your Honours, you can find that at transcript reference 41,502-3. Consequently, substitute biography for trial in the quote from Mr. Caro. We say, were a proper, thorough, incisive, penetrating analysis of the evidence of his role in this case reveals is not the exercise of any significant degree of power in the hands of Mr. Puzic, but quite the opposite, a glaring absence of power. Thank you, Your Honours.